Mariam stared at the ivory-colored invitation in her trembling hands. The golden letters shimmered under the dim light of her small living room. It was an invitation to the grand annual charity gala hosted by one of the most influential families in the city, the same family her husband, Ayon, had once been a part of before he chose a simpler life with her. She swallowed hard. Attending such an event alone felt like stepping into a world where she never belonged. Ayon had left early that morning, leaving behind only a soft kiss on her forehead and a whispered promise. Go. I'll join you later. But later felt uncertain now. Mariam glanced at her reflection. Her dress was simple, elegant, in its own quiet way, but nothing like the extravagant gown she imagined others would wear. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, trying to gather courage. You can do this, she whispered to herself. When she arrived at the grand ballroom, the sight overwhelmed her. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, and laughter echoed through the hall. Women draped in designer gowns stood beside men in tailored suits, their confidence filling the air. Mariam stepped inside hesitantly. Almost immediately, she felt eyes on her. Who is she? Someone whispered. She came alone. Does she even belong here? The words weren't loud, but they were sharp enough to pierce her heart. She forced a small smile and moved to a quiet corner, clutching her purse tightly. Her heart pounded as she scanned the room, hoping to see Ayon walk in. But he wasn't there. Minutes turned into an hour. The whispers grew louder, the stares more obvious. Finally, a group of elegantly dressed women approached her. Excuse me, one of them said, her tone dripping with mock politeness. Are you lost? The others chuckled softly. Mariam's cheeks burned. No, I was invited. Oh, another woman raised an eyebrow. And where is your companion? Mariam hesitated. He'll be here soon. The women exchanged glances, clearly unconvinced. Well, one of them said with a smirk, we do hope he actually exists. Their laughter followed them as they walked away, leaving Mariam standing there, humiliated. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't leave, not yet, because Ayon had promised, and she believed in him. The music played softly, but Mariam barely heard it. Every second felt heavier than the last. She tried to blend into the background, but it was impossible. She was different, not just in appearance, but in presence. She didn't carry the same arrogance, the same practiced confidence. Instead, she carried something quieter, something real. But tonight, it didn't seem to matter. Still alone. The voice startled her. It was one of the same women from earlier. Mariam turned, forcing a polite smile. Yes, just waiting. For someone who clearly isn't coming, the woman replied bluntly. Mariam's heart sank. He will come, she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. The woman tilted her head, studying her. You know, it's rather embarrassing to stand here like this. If I were you, I'd leave before people start talking more. Mariam looked down at her hands. They were shaking. I'll be fine. The woman shrugged. Suit yourself. As she walked away, Mariam felt a tear slip down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, taking a deep breath. He will come. She repeated it again and again, like a prayer. But doubt began to creep in. What if something had happened? What if he couldn't make it? What if he had forgotten? The thought hurt the most. Just as she was about to give in, to leave quietly and disappear from the judgmental eyes, something changed. The music stopped. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. And suddenly, the entire room fell silent. All eyes turned toward the entrance. Mariam's breath caught in her throat. A line of luxury cars had arrived outside, their headlights casting a glow through the open doors. Security personnel stepped in first, followed by a man in a perfectly tailored suit. Then another. And another. Whispers spread like wildfire. Who is that? Why is there security? Is someone important here? Mariam's heart raced. And then, she saw him. Ayon. But he wasn't. The same man who had left that morning in a simple shirt and worn shoes. Tonight, he looked different, powerful, confident. unrecognizable. He walked in with calm authority, his presence commanding the entire room. Conversation ceased. Even the most influential guests stood straighter, their expressions shifting from curiosity to respect. Mariam felt her knees weaken. This was her husband? Ayon's eyes scanned the room until they found her. And when they did, everything else faded. He walked straight toward her. The crowd parted instinctively, as if recognizing something they couldn't yet understand. Mariam's heart pounded as he stopped in front of her. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said gently, his voice filled with warmth. "Did you wait long?" Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they weren't from pain. "You came," she whispered. "Of course I did," he replied softly. "I promised." He took her hand, holding it with quiet strength. Behind them, the whispers had returned, but now they were different. "That's him." "It can't be." "Isn't he?" "Yes," someone confirmed. "He's the heir, the one who walked away." Mariam looked at him, confusion and/or mixing in her expression. "Ayon, what is going on?" He smiled. "Tonight," he said, "you'll understand everything." The host of the event hurried toward them, his face pale with shock. "Mr. Ayon, we didn't know you were coming," he said nervously. Ayon nodded slightly. "I wasn't sure I would." The man glanced at Mariam, his expression shifting instantly to respect. "And this must be." "My wife," Ayon said firmly. The word echoed in the room. The same people who had laughed at her earlier now stared in disbelief. The women who had mocked her stood frozen, their faces drained of color. "You see," Ayon continued calmly, "I left this world years ago. The wealth, the status, it never meant much to me." He looked at Mariam, his eyes softening. "But she does." Mariam felt her heart swell. "I chose a simple life," he went on. "And I'd choose it again. Every single time." The room was silent. "However," he added, his tone sharpening slightly, "I will not tolerate disrespect toward my wife." His gaze swept across the crowd, stopping briefly on the women who had humiliated her. They lowered their eyes, unable to meet his stare. "I apologize," one of them murmured, her voice trembling. "We didn't know." "You didn't need to know," Ayon interrupted gently. "Kindness doesn't require status." The words hit harder than any accusation. Mariam squeezed his hand, overwhelmed. "I never wanted this life," she whispered to him. "All of this." "I know," he replied. "That's why I left it. But tonight, I needed them to see you the way I do." "And how is that?" she asked softly. He smiled, as the most important person in the room. The rest of the evening changed completely. People who had ignored Mariam earlier now approached her with smiles and respect. Conversation shifted, tone softened, and the air felt different. But Mariam no longer felt small, because she wasn't alone anymore. She stood beside her husband, not because of his status, but because of his love. And that made all the difference. As the night drew to a close, Ayon led her outside. The cool air felt refreshing after the overwhelming atmosphere inside. Mariam looked up at him, her eyes shining. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "Yes, I did," he replied. "Why?" He took a moment before answering. "Because you deserve to be seen. Not judged. Not underestimated. Just seen." Tears filled her eyes again. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I almost left." "But you didn't," he said. "You stayed." "Because I trusted you." Ayon smiled, gently wiping away her tears. "And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that your trust was never misplaced." They stood there in silence for a moment, the world around them fading away. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the wealth. Not the status. Not the opinions of others. Only love. As they walked away together, hand in hand, Mariam realized something she would never forget. The people who laughed at her had only seen her simplicity, but Ayon had seen her strength. And in the end, that was the greatest secret.